Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. I'm your host, Joe Hamilton, along with Scott Tobin. Scott, how are you, man?
I'm good, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, both you and I were at the same game today, so I could be better. I could be better the way it ended. I certainly have a lot to say about this team, Scott, and after what we had to go through today. But it was a beautiful day. I mean, even though it was like 59 degrees at game time, I still got burnt. So that's something I can put in my journal. Also, you got burnt today too. It's funny, Scott. It doesn't even need to be that hot outside to get burnt, does it?
No, I mean it was a clear sky. There were no clouds in the sky at Busch Stadium at all today, and it was funny. If you were in the sun today, it was warm. If you were in the shade at Busch Stadium today, it was cold. There was literally like a 25-degree difference between sun and shade in that ballpark today.
Yeah, it was. And you know what? I certainly felt it before the game, walking around just checking out different things. I mean, Scott, I remember talking to you about this before the season, how many concession stands would be open, this and that. Well, you could tell some were closed. I mean, for anyone that has to drink an alcoholic beverage, where we were sitting, you'll have to walk all the way to the bud deck.
Yeah, I mean, different things are open. You got to realize there's only 13,000 people in the stadium at most right now, so they're not going to open everything up until things get closer to normal. And the Cardinals came out late this afternoon and announced that the attendance will stay the same, 13,000, 14,000 at most through the end of May. So hopefully as we get towards the end of June, first part of July, we're going to be able to open the ballpark up full capacity. That's the hope. But through the end of May, we're going to stay at this 13,000, 14,000 range. And tickets for May Bay Cardinal games went on sale this afternoon. So anybody out there that's wanting to get to a Cardinal game in May, tickets are on sale now. You can't tell that I work at the ballpark, can you?
Yeah, one thing before we get started about this game and talk about Yachty a little bit. Is it weird that I go to games and I listen to it too?
No, lots of people do that.
I mean, it's something that I've always wanted to do. I even asked for my birthday in 2019. I asked for, some headphones so I can go to Blues games and Cardinal games and listen to games. And I like it that way. I like it much better that way. I know it's weird, but anyway, let's get to the action on the field because this was a big-time milestone for Yadier Molina.
It was. Yachty became just the sixth catcher in Major League Baseball history to catch 2,000 games. The other five guys on that list, three of them are in the Hall of Fame, and Carlton Fisk, Pudge Rodriguez, and Jason Kendall. And then the other two, Gary Carter I'm totally out of it. Carlton Fisk, Pudge Rodriguez, and Gary Carter are in the Hall of Fame. The other two that aren't, that are right on the borderline, are Jason Kendall and Bob Boone. But yeah, Yachty, it's a huge thing, and Yachty's the first one to do it all with one team.
It really is, and it seems like he's gotten. And I know I've been hating on Yachty in the past, but I've seen what he's done lately, and getting older, and he's not slowing down. He's not slowing down. He may have had a slump when I said what I said earlier. If you guys watch this show, you know what I'm talking about. But Yadier Molina seems like ages like fine wine, something that we can't talk about with every player.
No, I mean, Yachty loves baseball. He loves to compete. And I mean, just look at Yachty physically. I mean, he's probably in the best shape he's ever been in his life. He went from being kind of pudgy when he was younger to getting almost too thin, probably in his mid-30s, to now he's in really good shape. He works out. They talk about that he runs 3 or 4 miles a day. He's a physical wonder at his age. He loves to compete, and I don't see Yachty going away anytime soon. And why would he? I mean, you look at the stats among catchers in baseball right now, and he's either first or second in every offensive and defensive category among catchers in Major League Baseball at his age. I mean, the guy's just a freak.
The guy's just a freak. That's a great way to explain it. Now let's talk about his battery weight. And I understood why they kind of rested him yesterday to make his 2000th game with his battery mate in Adam Wainwright, one of his best friends, and why not? But what, Scott, is it just me, or is Adam Wainwright kind of slowed down this season? I mean, yes, it's only a couple starts. I get it, but he doesn't look like the guy we saw in spring training.
He pitched pretty well today. He pitched really well today, actually. His defense didn't give him any help, but he didn't pitch a bad game today at all. He had 7 strikeouts. Yeah, he gave up a few hits, but if his defense makes a couple of plays, that's maybe a 1-run. He probably goes at least 6 innings, and maybe only gives up 1 run. You go back to that very first inning, or God, I can't talk today. You go back to I guess it was the 3rd inning. Ryan Zimmerman hits a home run that Lane Thomas really should have caught. I mean, it wouldn't have been an easy catch, but if Thomas gets back to the wall and times his jump, he barely has to jump for that ball. It hit off the outside part of the top of the fence and then bounced over. If Thomas gets back there and gets his glove up, he catches that ball, and that takes away the first 2 runs. Then he let a ball get past him later on. Then he overran a ball that let a run score later. And then him and Austin Dean just let a ball drop in between them, and later on in the game, in like the 7th inning. I mean, that was Adam Wainwright's biggest problem today. That his defense did not help him in any way, shape, or form.
But you gotta admit, though, this hasn't been the same Adam Wainwright we saw last year, of course. And I mean, again, it's early. It's early. He could have a few, and I expect him to have a few good outings before the season's over. I mean, a lot of good outings, but it's just not a good start for him. Scott, what do you think? Is it command issues at times with him, or is it at times he pitched well today? At times he pitched well today, but
again, he had 7 strikeouts. He did give up a few hits, but like I just said, his defense made some plays for him, and that game looks a whole lot better. And you can say he hasn't had a great start this year, but if you go back to his first start in Cincinnati, again, none of the balls in that game were hit hard off of him. They were just cueing the ball and finding holes, weakly hit balls that, I think they had 4 infield hits in that game. It was just bad luck. So he's not pitching bad by any stretch of the imagination. He just hasn't had the best luck. And so, I'm not worried about him at all. I still would have liked to have seen Mike Schilt have him go out there for that 6th inning today. I don't quite understand. I mean, I know what Schilt's trying to do, having his pitchers get pinch hit for, but you go back to last night, and I realized that the Cardinals scored 9 runs. But, you've got a 5-1 lead, and I realize the bases are loaded when Jack Flaherty's coming up there. But Flaherty's pitching pretty well in that ball game. You've got a 4-run lead, and you need your starters to eat some innings. And Flaherty already had a hit, and he's looked pretty good at the plate. I would have been tempted if I'm Mike Schilt to let Jack Flaherty's hit in that game last night and at least get a little bit more out of your starting rotation, because right now, I mean, you've had 1 game where your starters have gone more than 5 innings, and there's been a couple of games where they could have, and Schiltz just pulled them early. So, at some point, you've got to start letting these pitchers go deeper into games.
You talk about the outfield defense, and I don't know what shit was doing today with the lineup, because you think about it, Scott, you still want to win this series. You lost 2 of 3 from the Milwaukee Brewers. And you want to, you want to end this series and then the homestand on a high note. Why not have Dylan Carlson in that lineup? Why not have your everyday lineup in there? That just makes no sense to me.
I agree. I agree with a big day like that with Wainwright out there pitching. You would think you would want your best defense out there. On a big day for Yachty, you'd think you'd want to do everything you could to win this game today. At the same time, I understand it because Paul DeYoung and Dylan Carlson have pretty much played every inning of every game up until this point. So you give them a day off today, then they're off tomorrow, so they get 2 days off, and then they're ready. So in one way, I understand it, but at the same time, it's a bad look when you run that lineup out there. And, I know you've been really high on Lane Thomas in the past, wanted Lane Thomas to get opportunities. A lot of people have. I don't know what's happened to Lane Thomas. The guy that we saw a couple of years ago when he came up at the end of the season looked like a guy who maybe could be an everyday outfielder in the major leagues. The guy that we've seen last year when he came back from COVID and this year doesn't look like he has any business on a Major League Baseball field. I mean, he looked today like he was scared of the ball. I mean, there were a couple of plays where literally he's the center fielder, and you could tell, especially on that ball that dropped between him and Dean and Sosa, he didn't want to take charge. He was praying that somebody else would take charge and make that play, and he just kind of laid off and just kind of stood there. He's just played really timid and almost scared, especially in the outfield.
2 points I want to make here, and one is basically a question. Whose ball is that? Is that the center fielder's ball?
It's always
the one that dropped between Dean and Sosa and him?
It's always the center fielder's ball.
Yeah.
The center fielder, I mean, he's the general of the outfield. You know, if he can get to it, he's supposed to take charge, and he absolutely did not do that. And, you know, and you should especially do that when you look around and realize you have Austin Dean in left field, who's looked like he has no business in a major league outfield either. And then Edmundo Sosa's playing in his first start of the season, you know, and has played 2 games in the major leagues total. So you need to step up and really be the leader out there. And he didn't want to do it at all. And I don't know how many more chances Lane Thomas can get, because he's just looked bad. He looks bad at the plate. He looks bad defensively. And then, like I said, you talk about a guy like Austin Dean, who I know he has a little bit of offense, but, you know, think about how many runs those 2 guys in the outfield have given the other team on this homestand. I mean, you go back to that Milwaukee series, we saw the same thing happen in that series. You know, the game that Ponce pitched, Dean misses that very first fly ball in left field, and then everything kind of goes off the rails after that. You know, and there have been other instances of that on this homestand, and we saw it on the road as well. So I realize that you're kind of limited right now with Tyler O'Neill and Harrison Bader on the disabled list. But, you know, I almost think for now, you almost have to go out there every day and have Tommy Edman in either left or right and go Carlson and Justin Williams, because I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen from Justin Williams the last week or so. It looks like he's starting to figure it out.
Yeah, I've been really, really impressed. And he's starting to not overswing. We talk about that with Dylan Carlson as of late. He had 3 hits last night. It seems like he's starting to come out of it. Justin Williams, if you don't overswing, Scott, chances are you won't strike out as much. And I think he was trying to prove a little bit more, being a young guy coming up here. But I can see Justin Williams going on a hot streak. But I want to talk about this real quick, Scott, and it's the big elephant in the room in my mind. The Cardinals bullpen, the last time I checked, it's probably even more now. It is more now. They were like at 790 pitches through the first 10 games. You talk about guys not going far into a game. What is a quality start, Scott? What is a quality start? 5 or 6, first of all?
It's 5. 5 and 3 runs is what is considered a quality start. You need your starters to go 6. You need at least your top 3 guys to go 6 innings if you can. You know, and I know the Cardinals have been cautious with Jack Flaherty a couple of times already this season. We've seen it where they've had leads and they've pulled him. You know, you've got to start stretching Flaherty out a little bit. You know, hopefully KK is going to come back this weekend. You know, although who knows how long they're going to let him go in his first start of the season. You really need some depth out of him, and you need Carlos. Although Carlos has pitched in the 5th into the 6th once. So Carlos has given you some innings, you know, and people want to jump all over Carlos. You know, I mean, the last game he pitched, it was 3-0 when they took him out, you know, after 5 innings. It wasn't a horrible start. The start before that, you know, it started ugly, and then the bullpen kind of let it get away from him. So, you know, you need a quality start from Carlos. You need KK to show you something over the weekend. And then you've got to start stretching Flaherty and Wainwright out a little bit more. Schultz got to take some of the pressure off of that bullpen by just leaving his starters out there.
What is Johann Oviedo's point? Before I go to break and we talk more baseball after the break, what is Johann Oviedo's role at this point?
That's a really good question. You know what? You may end up seeing him. You may end up seeing them go every once in a while with a 6-man rotation. You may see some of that, or you may see him be a long man. Or, you know, if Carlos struggles, or if KK doesn't pitch well, you could see Oviedo just automatically go into that 5-man rotation. So I think it's still up in the air, but I think he's going to play a big role as we move on into the season.
When we come back, we're going to talk more about the Cardinals and baseball in general. So come back with us here on Crunch Time.
Hey Crunch Time fans, my name is Graham Forsyth. I'm the host of Coffee with Graham and the Prospect Show on ASTV Productions. On Coffee with Graham, I talk to athletes, coaches, and whoever else involved in the amateur sports scene in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And on the Prospect Show, I talk to the best young hockey prospects from around North America. You can catch all the coverage on ASTV Productions. You can catch Coffee with Graham on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. And for the Prospect Show, that show airs every Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time. Hope to see you there. Have a good one.
Welcome back into Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. Joe alongside Scott. I want to get to the lineup here because I'm still not happy with Goldie and Arenado hitting 2 and 3. Basically because, yes, I understand you want to get them the most at-bats possible. But you can't have one of those guys leading off an inning. We saw that today. You don't want to see that often. I know you're going to see it, Scott. You don't want to see it often. The way the Cardinals scored 14 yesterday and didn't score a run today, you need those guys hitting 3 and 4. And you need, if Dylan Carlson's in that lineup, to hit second. I mean, I'm sorry. That's the most consistent, productive lineup you have, and that's what you need to go to now.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter where they hit. If the guys at the bottom of your lineup aren't getting on base in front of them, it doesn't matter where they hit, because if those guys aren't hitting, then there's nobody on base in front of them no matter what. So you've got to have the bottom of your lineup, your 6, 7, 8 guys have to be hitting and getting on base too. So I agree with you. I think at some point Dylan Carlson needs to be in that 2 hole. Although, what I honestly think they need to do, and I don't know if Schilt will do it, but if you really want to get it, and Tony used to always say this, Marissa always used to say, if he wanted to get a guy going, you put him in that 2 hole in front of Goldie and Arenado. The guy who they need so badly to get going, I would stick Paul DeYoung in that 2 spot for a couple of weeks and see if you can get him some good pitches, get his confidence going. I mean, he had a couple of hits last night. He drove home a run. He looked a little bit better last night. So he's had a couple of hits the last couple of days. So maybe he's starting to break out of it a little bit, but you need his bat so bad. And we know how good he can be when he gets hot. So I think I would stick Paulie in that spot for a week or 2. See if you can get him going, and then once you do, then move him back down, either into that 4 or 5 hole, and then you could move Carlson up. I mean, ideally, Carlson is that number 2 hitter, but that's what I would do at least for a little while. What do you think of that idea?
Oh, you know what? Paul DeYoung's second may not be a bad idea. I mean, it would get him more pitches to hit. And you're going to have to pitch to Goldie or Arenado, or both for that matter, if you have that guy hitting. But what happens, Scott? Because you also want Carlson to hit second. Where do you put Carlson? Is Carlson your 4 hitter then? If you do that, I mean, or would you put Yachty there? You're leaving a hole there.
I think for right now you leave Yachty in that 4 hole. I think that's where he's going to be. I mean, he's not your prototypical 4 hitter, and you don't want him to hit there all year. But I think for right now, until you get DeYoung really going, and until you get Carlson going, I mean, he's shown signs of hitting more than just home runs here in the last week or so. He's starting to hit some doubles and draw some walks. But for right now, I think you leave Yachty in that 4 hole. Like I said, I would put either one of those guys at 2, but I think Paulie would be the one I would do first just to try to get that bat going. And then probably have Carlson, because he's that switch hitter, you probably put him in that 6 hole, although I know people aren't going to want to hear this, but more than likely for right now, Matt Carpenter is going to play almost every day because he is the best option right now, honestly. When you look at what you've got, if you don't want, I mean, to be totally honest with you right now, I feel much better about having Matt Carpenter playing second base and hitting in my lineup than I do having either Lane Thomas or Austin Dean in that lineup. And Carpenter made a hell of a catch at second base today. I mean, he turned on the jets, which who knew Matt Carpenter still had jets, and went out into shallow right field and made a sliding catch today. I mean, he's looked better. He hit a couple of balls hard today. He didn't have any hits, but he hit you could hear the ball coming off of his bat because there's not a whole lot of people in that ballpark. He's hitting the ball really, really hard. And so I think for right now, like I said, I think you have Yachty in that 4 hole, and then you either have Carpenter or Carlson in the 5-6 spot, unless you want to split up the lefty and the split hit and the switch hitter. But the thing there is that if Justin Williams was playing, there's another left-handed hitter. So you can kind of move those guys around however you want to, but I think you leave Yachty in that 4 spot right now.
All right. So my question to you right now is, what do you think of Tommy Edman in the leadoff spot? He's been doing some things, drawing walks. He had a leadoff walk in this game that didn't turn into anything. Don't know why, don't know how. But thing is, when you have your leadoff man getting off and he's at a 280 clip right now, Scott, Tommy Edman may be surprising you coming up, right?
He's done a good job. He's doing the thing that I said he had to do. My biggest problem with Tommy Edman was I said he wasn't drawing enough walks. He needed to get his on-base percentage up. He has started to draw more walks. He got a double today. He's only got 3 extra base hits. So most of his hits are singles, which are fine for a leadoff hitter. But he's starting to draw walks, and he's played pretty good in right field and second base. And so I'm happy with Tommy Edman at this point. He's doing a fine job. Things with this Cardinal lineup are going to turn around, though. I talked about Matt Carpenter hitting the ball hard and not having any luck. The guy who's hitting more balls hard than anybody else in baseball on average is Paul Goldschmidt, and he's not got a whole lot to show for it. I mean, he's just crushing balls right at people right now. He did hit a home run last night, but, he's got one of the hardest average ball off the bat velocity. It's like 100. His average hit is like contact rate is like 105 miles an hour off the bat, and he's hitting 240. Eventually, some of those balls are going to start finding gaps, and then this offense really takes off. And you saw what it could happen when he does last night. Him and Nolan both having 3 RBIs. This offense is going to be a little bit better, and and so like I said, at some point DeYoung's going to hit, and Carlson's going to figure it out. And, they're not going to set the world on fire. They're not going to be one of the top offenses in baseball, but they're going to score more runs than they did last year, and they're going to look better at some point here soon.
Okay, Lester brings up a good point here before we move on to Nolan Arenado and this thread that got way out of control. Now, if you hit Paulie second, Molina number 4, where do you hit Goldie and Arenado? Okay, so you got to rethink that, Scott.
Yeah, sorry. Then Yachty would be 5. Yeah, I'm sorry. My brain's not working real fast tonight.
Would you – that would be a real tough for me. I'd want either Carlson or Yachty. I don't know, man. That's a tough one. That's a tough one for sure. Now, before we go to the MLB scoreboard talking about the surprise of the week in the Boston Red Sox, I tagged you in something. And I don't know where people's heads are, and I'm not trying to bash people by any means, but when you have opinions like this, I don't understand where it comes from. It's like you're reaching for something. So I posted something on Nolan Arenado and basically STL Sports Central saying in like jokingly, oh, he can't hit outside of Colorado, outside of Coors Field. Well, that caused a shitstorm. A shitstorm from somebody saying that Bryce Harper is Bryce Harper, and I didn't mention this to you, Scott. Alex Bregman was a better third baseman than Nolan Arenado.
Some people have that opinion. Nolan's a good ball player. There's some people that they're going to nitpick, and if you say, oh, Nolan Arenado's great just to be stupid, they're going to say, oh, no, he's not. This guy's way better, or I don't think he's going to do anything. People can have opinions. You tagged me in that thread, and so I kind of tore into the guy a little bit with some stats. But, Nolan's, when you hear MLB Hall of Fame players say Nolan's one of the best third basemen they've ever seen, and we've seen it through 12 games. He's not having any problem hitting. People said he's not going to hit at Busch Stadium. Well, he's already hit 2 home runs at Busch Stadium. He hit a ball today, a line drive into the left center field gap that almost went through the middle of the wall. He hit it so hard. He's not having any trouble hitting at Busch. He's not going to have any trouble hitting on the road. The guy's a superstar, and there's some people that aren't going to like him because he's a Cardinal now, because a lot of people want to hate on the Cardinals. And like I said, there's some people that aren't going to like him just because you said he was good. Somebody wants to argue with you and say, oh, no, he's not. So, you just got to take that stuff with a grain of salt and move on, because anybody that knows anything about baseball knows that Nolan's better than Alex Bregman, or, I've heard Anthony Rendon is better than Nolan Arenado. No, he's not. It's just fact. He's one of the best third basemen that's ever played the game to this point in his career.
He is. He's one of the best. And also I heard Bryce Harper, because Harper got paid more. Look, and they wanted to make the argument of Bryce Harper last year with his average. He had a great average last year. I'm not going to say that, but I will say that was in a 60-game season. You're in a 162-game season. You can't compare that, can you?
No. And, and people will say Arenado had a bad year last year, and he did. So did a lot of people, and he had a bad shoulder last year. I know you're not that high on Bryce Harper. I'm a huge Bryce Harper guy. I think Bryce Harper is a great ball player. He's one of the best outfielders there is in baseball right now. There's no question about that when you look at his power, his speed, and his defense. But, to try to say that he's better than Nolan Arenado, you can't really make that comparison because they play two totally different positions. And that's kind of what I said at the end of my comment on that thread. They're both great players, but, when MLB Hall of Famers are comparing Nolan to Brooks Robinson, I think that's all that needs to be said right there.
Exactly. Now on to the Boston Red Sox, and this team, they just keep on keeping on, man. I don't know what it is, because they don't have pitching, but they do have an offense. So this is 8 straight wins now for the Boston Red Sox. What do you think's the big reason why they're 8-0 in their last 8 games?
One of the biggest reasons JD Martinez is JD Martinez again. He had a 3-homer game the other night. He's hitting over 300. He's driving balls off the monster. He looks like the JD Martinez of a couple of years ago. Xander Bogaerts is off to a really good start. They're scoring runs. I mean, we knew they had a good lineup. We talked about it when we did our breakdowns last week. That they had a lineup and they were going to score runs. The question was their pitching. And they've gotten enough out of their pitching to keep it going right now. Are they good enough to win that division with the pitching they have right now? I don't think so. But for right now, they're a good story.
Yeah, for right now, they're a good story. And you like to hear good stories like that. It's early in the season. I mean, I don't think they'll be there at the end. But, yeah, that's pretty cool to see. Maybe they have a good year, Scott, because they have their manager back. And maybe if they're in it by the deadline, even at a wild card, I could see them going out and getting pitching, because it is Boston. I don't put anything past Boston. So,
well, and you got to remember, if they get to the deadline or around that time of the year, they're also going to get their ace back. Chris Sale will be back towards the end of July. So that will be a big boost to that rotation if they get there. So, yeah, I mean, if they can stick around till that point, they could be a threat in that division, because the Yankees have been a disappointment to this point. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we shall see what happens. Now, just going through the scoreboard real quick. New York Yankees, Toronto Blue Jays down in Dunedin. Toronto beat New York 5-4. The Nationals Cardinals game that ended 6-0. Nationals, you got the Milwaukee Brewers, Chicago Cubs, and this is another big story. Is this something that you saw coming from the Cubs, not being able to hit whatsoever?
I mean, that's been their problem the last couple of years. They have all those big names, but they haven't been very good for a couple of years now offensively. So it's not a huge surprise, because we've kind of seen this be a trend with them.
Yeah, it's not a huge surprise, but it's something worth keeping an eye on, especially come trade deadline. So you Cubs Brewers and 7-0 Milwaukee. Kansas City Royals beat the LA Angels by a score of 6-1. And the Angels, I think, are coming back down to earth, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. They don't have enough pitching. A lot of people were high on them. They don't have enough pitching, and that's what it comes down to.
Red Sox beat the Twins 3-2 in Minnesota. You had the Cincinnati Reds falling to the San Francisco Giants 3-0. Again, that lineup can't hit outside of Great American Ballpark, although they did have a good showing a couple games ago in terms of the offense. In game 2 of that doubleheader, you had the Boston Red Sox beating the Minnesota Twins 7-1. Wait, yeah, doubleheader. I'm right. 7-1. You had the Pittsburgh Pirates beating the San Diego Padres 5-1. Are we at the point now where we start worrying about if the Padres are for real or not? I know it's only 12 games into the season, but yeah, this isn't good. Losing 2 out of 3 to a team that you should be manhandling.
I mean, it's baseball. Stuff happens. You got to remember that they're also missing their shortstop. And you're going to have series like that. I wouldn't be too worried about it, though. That's still a good ball club in San Diego.
Philadelphia, New York. The New York Mets crushed the Phillies by a score of 5-1. You have the Texas Rangers winning 5-1 over the Tampa Bay Rays. That's a struggling Tampa Bay team, that's for sure. Games live right now, you have the Detroit Tigers doubling up the Houston Astros 6-3. That game's in the bottom of the 8th. You have the Miami Marlins over the Atlanta Braves 6-5. This is something you need to keep an eye on, Scott, and I do. We all do. The Atlanta Braves are atrocious right now. And the only glaring weakness I see in Atlanta is their pitching.
That's a pretty big weakness.
Yes, it is. The Chicago White Sox are beating the Cleveland Indians 8-0. That game's in top of the 8th. And you have a game going on out west between the Colorado Rockies and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Dodgers are winning that game 1-0. Again, that's early. Scott, before we go to break, anything else baseball-wise?
No, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. We've seen some teams that we expected to be really good kind of struggling early. We've got a couple of surprises that are pretty good so far. So it's going to be an exciting baseball season to see how this all plays out.
It really is. Scott, tell everybody what is next after the break.
Coming up after this, we're going to dive into the NHL a little bit and talk about the St. Louis Blues who are in action right now.
Come back for that here on Crunch Time. Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. Joe Hamilton alongside Scott Tobin. Scott, I know the St. Louis Blues have been hot, but they were put back down to earth tonight by the first place Colorado Avalanche. But first of all, Scott, I want to get your thoughts on the good things the St. Louis Blues kind of gave us over the week that was since last Monday. This team's been playing absolutely like we think this team should play. What's the biggest reason for that?
They've played, they came out with a fire. We've seen their goaltending play better. They've played like a team. Their defense has looked better. They've scored a lot of goals. They've just played like a unit together, like we've talked about them needing to do for the last month or so. It seemed like everybody was all pulling in the same direction. You had a big game from Mike Hoffman a couple of games ago. Ryan O'Reilly's had a couple of big games, and they've just looked better. They look like they've got that fire and that confidence back, and it's good to see.
It really is good to see. And you mentioned Mike Hoffman. You go to the deadline. Are they going to move him? Are they not going to move him? Turns out they didn't move him. And Scott, do you think that's the right move? You think this Blues team can make a run?
Yeah, I think it was the move they had to make. I mean, if Robert Thomas doesn't get hurt, maybe they still make that move. But, when Hoffman comes back and has 2 goals in that last game and then Thomas gets hurt, I think it's a move that you had to make. But, they've got to put – Craig Berubbe's got to put Mike Hoffman in the right situations going down the stretch. You've got to use him more on the power play. You've got to take advantage of his strengths and use him in opportunities when he does his best. And, hopefully he can get hot, and hopefully this team can keep playing well. They had a tough game tonight, although they made it a little bit closer at the end.
Yeah, they did make it a little closer at the end. The game ended 4-3, and here's the thing. They had a great first period. The first period by the Blues, I was even talking to my dad as I was watching that first period. If they skate like they did in the first period, they win that game. The problem is the St. Louis Blues really don't play 60 minutes of clean hockey ever. I don't know what it is with this team. They have maybe a couple games where they do, but they're not consistently putting together 60 minutes of hockey. They'll have 40. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, the thing is, Scott, I mean, during this 3-game winning streak, they just looked like the different team. They looked like a team that could play with anybody. They came out in the first period shoving it down Colorado's throat. Then you come out in the second period, and Colorado is doing the exact same thing to you that you were doing to them. And watching the broadcast tonight, and this was key, watching the broadcast tonight, guys on NBCSN said the way to play the McKinnon line is you got to make them defend. I didn't feel like the Blues did that enough in the second period. Now, they had a lot of tough puck luck in the first period, a couple posts, a couple passing a little too much. But you know what? That is what I want to see. If I'm going to lose a game like that, I want it to be 4-3 because, listen, you're going to face these guys 3 times in the next 10 games. You need to be playing at your best. And Scott, do you see Colorado as being that much faster than the Blues, like I saw in that second period?
Yeah, I think they are. Yeah, I don't think the Blues played that horrible in the second period. I think Colorado is just a little bit faster and a little bit better than they are. And I mean, look at their records. There's a reason why Colorado's the number 1 team in the conference. And they showed it today. The Blues, like I said, made a comeback in that third period, played a little bit better again. But I don't think the Blues played awful in that second period. I think Colorado is just a little bit better than they are at this point.
What are they beating the Blues? What did they beat the Blues with tonight? Was it speed? Was it tenacity on the puck? Was it the Blues not winning board battles? What was it?
I think you hit it with the top 2. I think it was a little bit of speed, and I think they just came out and said, "Okay, you're going to play us tough in that first period. We're going to show you why we're the number 1 team in the conference." And they just came out and went into attack mode, and the Blues weren't able to hold up in that second period.
Yeah, it's awful because I mean, look, you're not going to win every game, but you were coming in on a high coming into this game, and Jordan Binnington, I want to talk about him real quick because this game is not on him at all. This game is not on him. He played lights out in that game where he had 50 saves. That was the Jordan Binnington that I like to see. That's the Jordan Binnington we saw in 2019. He said something right after that. He said, "We're coming." And for 2 games after that, it looked like that they were coming, and they did. They're here. They're going to make the playoffs, Scott. But how are they going to do it? They have to win 2 out of 3 games next week against the Colorado Avalanche. The good thing about that is, actually, I don't know if that's really such a good thing. The Blues play the Colorado Avalanche at home. Their record at home is not very good.
Yeah, no, they haven't played great at home. The one thing the Blues have to look at tonight is as a fan, you have to be encouraged by is, you're down 4-1 going into that third period. They could have just kind of laid down and said, "Okay, we just got beat by a better team." But they didn't. They were resilient in that third period. They got a couple of goals. They fought back. And so that should make you feel good going into that next game against Colorado that they did have that fight in them. They were right in it till the very end of the game. So that should give the Blues a little bit of momentum going into that next game against Colorado.
Well, here's the thing. They got one more game. They got a game Saturday against Arizona, then it's 3 straight against Colorado at home. Now, right. Arizona's been a thorn in the Blues side. If you remember earlier in the season, the Blues lost a 7-game series to them. I mean, a legit 7-game series. So, and that's the team right behind you. I believe they're only 1 point behind the St. Louis Blues for 4th place in the Honda West Division. Right. So you need to look at Arizona first because teams like Arizona can really mess with the Blues, and they have.
Yeah, I think this team is going to come out and play well. And I just meant, I knew they still had a game. I knew they had the game with Arizona before Colorado.
Right.
I just meant they'd had that confidence when they met Colorado again next week.
Right.
Yeah, I think they're going to come out and play Arizona. Don't think the Blues haven't forgotten that they lost that 7-game series that felt like it was never going to end against Arizona early in the season. I think they're going to come out fired up. I think they want to prove a point to them too that they're a better team. They know what they have to do, and I expect them to come out and kind of dominate that game, honestly, because they have to, and I think they know that.
Yeah, they kind of have to. It's hard forecheck early, and your goaltending needs to be on top. I talked about Jordan Binnington having that 50 save, brilliant performance. Billy Husso, we've gotten some better play out of him too.
He's starting to get more comfortable. You're getting later into the season. At this point, I don't think you can really consider him a rookie anymore because I know it's a shortened season, but he's played you're through the majority of the season. That rookie thing kind of goes away at this point. He looks more comfortable. The guys seem to feel like they are a little bit more confident now when he's in the net. So those are good things, and hopefully that keeps going as you move forward down the stretch.
Yeah, hopefully that moves forward down the stretch for sure, Scott. And the deadline, I wanted to ask you about a few moves. One really, and that's the Taylor Hall move to Boston. Was that the only place he was going to end up in your mind?
Probably. I know a lot of people talked about him coming to St. Louis and thought maybe the Blues would move Mike Hoffman and then make that move. That wasn't going to happen, for a lot of reasons. For one, if you would have made that move, we talk about Mike Hoffman, and, we've talked about it with a couple of different guys coming into this organization in the last couple of years, and it taken a while for them to get into the groove and fit in. You don't want to make a move like that with a guy like Taylor Hall at this point in the season and have another adjustment. So the Blues weren't going to do that, plus the financial thing and everything else. So, yeah, I think Boston was the best fit for him, and that makes the Bruins kind of scary.
Yeah, it does. Just hopefully he doesn't bring that team down. There's a reason, Scott, he's been traded as much as he has. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he is a very good player at the same time, though.
Yeah, I will give you that, Scott. He's a very, very, very good player. And the team the Blues played tonight went out and got another goaltender in Devin Dubnyk, which played absolutely lights out against the Blues tonight. That shores up their goaltending. I mean, Philip Grubauer just went on the COVID-19 list, COVID-19 protocol list. So that's a huge, huge move for the Minnesota Wild.
You mean the Colorado Avalanche?
I mean, the Colorado. I get that mixed up because he was on the Minnesota Wild. That's why I got that mixed up. So just going through the scoreboard, you have the Arizona Coyotes and Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild beat the Arizona Coyotes by a score of 5-2. The Calgary Flames beat the Montreal Canadiens by a score of 4-1. The Winnipeg Jets beat the Ottawa Senators 3-2. You have the Colorado Avalanche obviously beating the St. Louis Blues 4-3. And the two games going on right now, you have the Vegas Golden Knights up on the Los Angeles Kings 3-1. That game is in the first period, toward the end of the first period. And then you have Anaheim and San Jose going on. There is no score in that game with about 15 minutes left in the first period. So the best thing about seasons like this, Scott, is there's more and more there's more and more what was I going to say? Scoreboard watching. There's more and more scoreboard watching. Man, I hate scoreboard watching because I almost have to bite my nails when doing it, especially if you're not far up on a team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's that time of the year, and it happens in every sport. But, yeah, it's definitely that time in the NHL where you're checking that scoreboard every day to see what everybody else is doing. So it's going to be a stressful couple of weeks just watching that as well as watching the Blues play every night.
That's for sure. And also, Lester makes a good point here. The Blues played Arizona with a ton of injuries. What can this team do healthy against Arizona? That's going to be the big question.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was talking about.
Yeah.
That series started, the injuries kind of started during that series, it seemed like. But yeah, with this team, with everybody pretty much healthy at this point, for the most part, You just got to go out there and dominate that team. This is where you have to beat those teams that you should be better than, and that's what the Blues have to do Saturday night.
That's what they have to do. So, Scott, what do we got when we come back?
When we come back, we're going to talk some NFL. There were a couple of interesting notes from around the National Football League today. So stay tuned to Crunch Time. We'll be talking football when we come back right after this commercial break.
Theo here on ASTV. Check out my show Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 p.m. On the Ice. Me and my guests break down all of the hottest and latest topics surrounding the world of hockey.
As always, that's Theo. That's On the Ice, and check out his and every one of the other shows here on ASTV Productions. They do a wonderful job. Now, Scott, I want to start with the Aaron Donald situation. I didn't quite get to read into this, but I did see the headline. What is that stemming from?
Basically what happened, if people don't know, today, lawyer Todd Hollis in Pittsburgh told people that his client, a man named Vincent Sargent, filed assault charges against Aaron Donald, saying that Donald beat him up last weekend, Friday night into early Saturday morning, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, at an after-hours club in Pittsburgh. He had pictures of DeVincent that showed a black eye and some scratches and some cuts on his face. So they filed assault charges with the Pittsburgh Police Department today. And now it's going to be really interesting because you're going to have a court situation with Aaron Donald. The NFL is going to have to investigate, and it's going to put Aaron Donald's offseason under the spotlight, and it puts into question whether Aaron Donald will be available when the season starts because, if they find him guilty of assault, he probably gets suspended, and who knows what happens. And so, again, early stages, so you don't want to make any assumptions or anything. But, that's another big black mark against a huge star in the NFL in an offseason that's already seen too many of those to some of their biggest names. So not a good look. You hope, Aaron Donald's a great football player, and from, his time in St. Louis seemed to be a great guy. So, we'll see how it plays out. It doesn't seem to go with his personality that we know of, but you just never know. So we'll see how this all plays out.
You never know, that's for sure, Scott. And I don't understand how, and it more comes in the NFL, really, that, you look into these guys as role models, and some of these guys aren't role model. Like, what is it, Scott? Why do you think there's a big discrepancy? And I brought up the NFL because it seems to happen in the NFL more than anything.
It happens everywhere. It happens in every sport. We see it in the NBA. We see it in the MLB. We see it everywhere. And again, I'm not going to say that Aaron Donald's not a role model because things happen.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And unfortunately, and this is part of being a professional athlete, you have situations where you go out in public, you go to a bar, you go to a club, and there's going to be that guy that's going to come up to you and try to start something to try to, just to try to get you to do something. And we see this happen a lot. You're out drinking, some guy gets in your face, tells you you're no good, blah, 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 you're overrated. Things get heated. I'm not saying that's what happened with Aaron Donald, but those are situations that happen quite often with not only professional athletes, but college athletes. And, it's a part of that being an athlete and being out in the public. And, we'll see how this plays out. But I'm definitely not going to say that Aaron Donald's not a role model because he's done a lot of good things. Hopefully we find out he's not involved with this or that it's not true. But if it is, we'll dig into it and see what the situation was that caused it.
Yes, we will be locked on to Crunch Time. We will have that for you. Scott, before you go any further in terms of news, is there any news in the Deshaun Watson saga?
That's where I was going to go next. The other big superstar that's had a black mark on their name during this offseason, Deshaun Watson. So 20 of the women who filed their lawsuits are having that lawsuit amended and having their identities revealed. So that's going to be really interesting. As that's happening, one of the women who had filed a lawsuit has now dropped her lawsuit. So it was down to 19 women. But then another woman filed a lawsuit today, and this is really interesting. And again, I don't want to attack anybody's personality, anybody's credibility, anything else. But this new woman who has accused Deshaun Watson is apparently a freelance makeup artist who, according to her, Deshaun Watson reached out to and asked her if she did massages, which seems really weird to me. I'm not sure. I don't understand why Deshaun Watson is like going on social media trying to find different women to do massages. I mean, that just is a weird look. But if you're a freelance makeup artist, why are you doing massages, for one? And then in her lawsuit, she says that she gave Deshaun a massage on 2 different occasions, in September and in December. And both times he sexually assaulted her by making her touch him and do things. So if he reached out to you in September and he made you do something that made you feel uncomfortable, why would you go back and do it again in December? I mean, again, I'm not trying to attack anybody's character, but I have a huge question mark when I see that.
Yeah, that seems like a huge question mark, and I don't understand that. That's sad. That is sad.
So, yeah, it's the Deshaun saga is really interesting. Who knows how this is all going to play out, and what it's going to lead to. I mean, there's still at this point aren't any criminal charges involved. So as of right now, Deshaun can still play when the season starts. I mean, the NFL is going to do their due diligence and see what happens. But, we just don't know if Deshaun Watson's going to play or where Deshaun Watson's going to play. Because in the middle of all of this, there were new rumors today that linked the Philadelphia Eagles to Deshaun Watson. And the Eagles are still very interested in trading for him, as are the Miami Dolphins. So there's no guarantees that Deshaun Watson, first of all, plays the season. Second of all, there's no guarantees if he's going to be in Houston or if he gets traded. So, there's just a whole whirlwind around Deshaun that it's going to be really interesting to see how this whole thing plays out.
Scott, I remember you were emphatic when I asked you the question, does he get traded? You say no. Now you're starting to change your mind?
No, I'm not changing my mind. I'm still not saying that he's going to get traded. I'm just saying that Philadelphia and Miami are both still very much linked to him. Philadelphia is a new team that's kind of in the last couple of weeks has really stepped up the pursuit of Deshaun Watson, which is interesting. That says a lot about what they think about Jalen Hurts. So whether Deshaun gets traded this offseason or not, I still don't really think he does. But we also saw Houston kind of make the Texans kind of come out and kind of distance themselves from Deshaun, kind of talk about possibly even releasing him. So, if that happens, then, it's a free-for-all. Anybody can go get him. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. I think we're going to have a better idea of what's going to happen by the draft, which is in a couple of weeks, as far as if he's going to be a Texan or if he goes somewhere else, besides the legal aspect of it.
Yeah, that's again, if any news breaks, stick to us here on Crunch Time on all of our social media pages. We will have that for you. Scott, you're in a group chat I'm in. The same group chat all of us are in. Go ahead and blast me on the Edelman scenario. If he's a Hall of Famer or not, and just blast me, because I then posted something that you guys talked about in the group chat about Sterling Sharp not being in the Hall of Fame and Hines Ward not being in the Hall of Fame. So let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, Julian Edelman, if people don't know, Julian Edelman retired from the New England Patriots yesterday. And you had said you thought he was a surefire Hall of Famer. Julian Edelman was a very good wide receiver during the regular season. He put up solid numbers, 6,000 receiving yards. He had quite a few touchdowns. He had a very good career during the regular season. During the postseason and the Super Bowl, he's the second leading receiver in catches and yards in NFL history behind Jerry Rice. And he is a Super Bowl MVP. So does that trump what he did during the regular season and make Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer? I'm not sure. I think he's right on. I think because of that, he's right on the border. His regular season stats nowhere close. I think that makes him a borderline candidate for the Hall of Fame. If he does get in, it's going to be a long time because, like you said, guys like Hines Ward, guys like Sterling Sharp, guys like Torrey Holt all need to be in there before he is. So I think it's a long time coming, and I'm not sure that he does, but it's possible. And before we wrap up the show, as we're running low on time, there was a big move on the field in the NFL today. And as a Cleveland Browns fan, I'm very happy. Jadeveon Clowney signed with the Browns today. So the Browns now may have the best pair of edge rushers in the NFL. When you pair Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett together in Cleveland, they're going to be really scary. And I'm going to go out on a limb, Joe. I'm going to top your Buffalo Bills Super Bowl prediction. The Cleveland Browns are the AFC champions and go to the Super Bowl.
Wow. Okay. I mean, again, you got to get past Kansas City, and if Buffalo, in my mind, last year couldn't do it.
But who played Kansas City tougher in their playoff game last year? Buffalo or Cleveland?
Cleveland.
And who did Cleveland not have? They didn't have their best wide receiver. Odell wasn't there. And they had an injury on their offensive line. And they didn't have a guy like Jadeveon Clowney. What did we see Kansas City have trouble with in the Super Bowl? Protecting Patrick Mahomes. So now you got those two edge rushers and a defensive tackle like Sheldon Richardson, and the Browns improve their defense. And you add a guy like Odell Beckham to that offense that the Browns had with the two running backs and Jarvis Landry and the tight ends they have. And all of a sudden, the Browns match up pretty well with anybody offensively in the AFC.
Okay. I'm out. I mean, that would be interesting. Now, Lester brings up a point here. He says, do you guys think he will sign to Tampa to be back with Brady? And he's talking about Edelman. And I'm like, no, Edelman announced his retirement. But then again, you did get Gronk out of retirement. So anything's possible in that instance, but I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you saw it, but Gronk pretty much said like yesterday, there's a 65% chance that Julian Edelman plays again, which is Gronk just being Gronk. I mean, I could see a possibility where he came back, but he also had a lot of injuries the last couple of years. So he's not a real big guy. So I'm not sure that his body can physically withstand a full season at this point. So I don't really see him coming back, but if Antonio Brown doesn't re-sign with Tampa, and he still hasn't, then that's when there's maybe a possibility that Edelman goes there.
All right. That's the situation we'll have to keep an eye on, of course. On the Hall of Fame conversation, how is Hines Ward not in by now?
There's not a ton of wide receivers in the Hall of Fame. It's taken a long time. How's Hines Ward right in there? Look how long it took Isaac to get in there. It took Tim Brown forever to get in there. There's just a backlog of guys in the NFL because to get into the NFL Hall of Fame is a pretty tedious process. It's a popularity contest. There's a lot that goes into your presentation to get you into the Hall of Fame. Hines Ward should be in there at some point, but yeah. There's a backlog of wide receivers that aren't in there. That's why I say Julian Edelman has got a long wait if he ever gets in.
Yeah, that's for sure. And Scott, anything else before we go tonight?
Pretty good show tonight. Not a whole lot really else to talk about. We can start looking forward to the Cardinals and the Blues over the weekend. And have a good night. Good show tonight, Joe.
Thanks a lot, man. Well, hey, it was a good show tonight. Thank you guys for watching at home. Be sure to come back come back and watch us tomorrow and every night at 9:00 here on ASTV Productions. For Scott Tobin, I'm Joe Hamilton. Do the right things out there so we can go back to going to ball games again. That was a fun atmosphere to be in, even though it was kind of weird, to be honest with you. But I loved every minute of it. For Scott Tobin, I'm Joe Hamilton. See you guys tomorrow night.